Okay, let's talk about some mid-range tech then in that case. So I do have the stats for Intel. Intel, or if the FTSE 100 was a tech stock. Right, so they reported their earnings and they reported revenue of 14 billion, which was down 32%. They reported an EPS loss of 16 cents, which for a company that was not so long ago basically a fairly steady cash building thing is quite the result. They forecast a bigger loss for the next quarter of 80 cents. And their dividend continues for the moment. Breaking that down just a little bit, PC revenue was down 36%, data center was down 33%, network revenue was down 1%, profits went through the floor on all of these. PC went down 82%, data center down 84%, network stuff down 84%. One thing went up, though, I saw of a segment of theirs that was up 59% on revenue and 71% on earnings. Any idea what that was, Steve?
No, go on.
It was Mobileye, which they've mostly got rid of now.
No, that was great.
Yep.
Anything else in there that jumped out at you?
Well, they're keeping their dividend, and I saw this in Sven's video, who has now turned his face away from Intel for the moment, but they are planning on slowing down their depreciation costs for their accountancy next year. That means that their profit numbers will be higher than they would otherwise have been. They've decided that their equipment has a longer life, basically, than they thought it had before, so there will be lower depreciation charges than they were expecting on their Q1 next year stuff. That I'm not sure about, that I think is a good idea. If I were Intel, I would want to be depreciating this stuff as fast as I possibly can and not paying any tax. But I have a quote for you, which is, it feels like they're cleaning out a lot of the bad news, which was from a guy called Matt Bryson, who was with Wedbush Securities, except he said that in July. This has been going for a little while now for Intel. They've had about 3 quarters of thinking, okay, this is the bottom. They did talk a good game in terms of a growth story of getting back to leadership by 2025, 26. I think the kind of person who owns Intel shares owns them largely because they have a dividend that currently yields 5% or so. I'm not optimistic for people with that idea. They talked about getting to what they consider a competitive dividend. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I think the average dividend yield in this sector is just under 2%. So I would expect that dividend to get cut in the next couple of quarters, but you never know. I think they probably have the wrong type of shareholder, to be honest. What they need is someone who's minded towards waiting around 2 years while nothing happens apart from the stock goes wherever it goes, mostly due to market factors, but occasionally due to them reporting yet another loss. And then they have a massive manufacturing business, and you can make of that what you will. But I think what they have is a bunch of people who want whatever it is per share every quarter, and that's not a good fit, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, on the dividend, you can see why investors often get referred to as parasites by people on the left of sort of politics, can't you? Because basically the Intel CEO has cut pay across the board of its employees whilst committing to paying a dividend, which they've coincidentally taken on debt. Whether you think that's to pay the dividend or not, they're still paying it, and it's probably going to come from that debt. So that's kind of... That's not a good thing. You don't want to see that. This dividend should have gone. You know, Steve and I were saying it should have gone a long time ago. They had a huge CapEx program coming along. The minute this CapEx program reared its head, and it should have reared its head 2 or 3 years ago, but even 2 or 3 quarters ago, when Gelsinger really committed to it, this dividend should have gone, and all of that money should have gone into that. And the people who stick around holding on to Intel will reap the rewards of that. You know, that them spending that capex and not ruining the balance sheet in the process of doing it. So I pulled a quote from the earnings report where Gelsinger said, "We continue to make good progress on our strategic transformation in Q4, including advancing our product roadmap, improving our operational structure and processes to drive efficiencies while delivering at the low end of our guided range." And you just think to yourself, that was a load of rubbish, isn't it? They didn't guide for it to be that bad. It was awful, and there was nothing really good in that report whatsoever. And then made worse by the fact that AMD came out and said, well, it's not so bad for us. You know, AMD's results were fairly good. I went through AMD and I thought, well, why aren't AMD having all of the problems that Intel are having? And it's because Intel are just really, 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 really badly executing at the moment, and yeah, I didn't know what to make of it really, because a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, Steve, we were quite optimistic about this transformation. We thought that this might actually be a decent idea for Intel to get into this kind of thing. It was a shame because they were going to destroy some margins, but they've been so far behind on chips and continue to be so far behind on chips for the longest time that making a move into, especially a move that the American government wants to pretty much fund, was probably a decent idea, but they've just made such a mess of it. Would you be holding this stock today, Steve? Are you going to buy it today?
I am not going to buy it today. I wonder when the bottom is in for Intel. Here is why I'm not going to buy this stock today. 3 reasons. One is they do the wrong stuff, in my view. I am opposed to them paying a dividend and taking on debt to fund it. I think they should have lost this dividend quite a long while ago while they were busy losing their lead to AMD while chucking out dividends and doing buybacks. That's a view that goes back quite a long way. The second is that this all looks very impressionistic to me. It's going to be a long way into the future before they regain their leadership. And I struggle to see how that thesis stays on track and in a meaningful way that I can evaluate. Gelsinger will tell me it's going well. And he may be telling the truth, by the way. I don't have anything bad to say about him at all. I am firmly in the camp that says he's still clearing up the mess he inherited. Sven said there's very much 2 schools of thought on this. Partly that Gelsinger's inherited a mess and hasn't had a chance to turn it round yet because it's a big tank to try and turn round. And another school of thought that says he needs to be getting on with this faster. I'm not in that second category at all. I think he's very much got a challenge on his hands and he needs time to do that. So I don't see his seat as at all hot on the theme that we were discussing with Jassy. Third is I don't really think I rate the product when it comes out. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure I like the manufacturing business. It's going from a high margin, low capital intensity business to one that's the opposite way round. I can sort of see there's a return there, and clearly Taiwan Semi is a very good business. It does quite good like that. I suspect there is room for more manufacturing there than just them, and it doesn't necessarily come down to having to fight each other for it. They did say they had a lead in something, though, which we can come back to in a moment, but you're not buying it, I assume?
No, I'm not, and I was just thinking then as you were talking, Steve, I wonder what odds we would have got maybe 6 months ago of saying that Peloton would look like a better turnaround story than Intel in 6 months' time, because I was looking at Peloton's report only the other day and realised that they've actually, Barry McCarthy there has done a pretty decent job with that Peloton business. He's actually got the subscription revenue is now way higher than the bikes themselves, so very, very interesting. Still not managing to make any money on a $1,500 bike, which seems to be one of the strangest things in the world. I'm sure, give me 20 minutes, I could find somebody who can make an exercise bike cheaper than that with an iPad on it. I mean, I could find you I'll put some wheels on your clothes area. You know what I mean? I'm sure I can make it cheaper than this. But yeah. Interesting to see that. Really, I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I was shocked when that Intel report came out, and I read through it, and I thought, there's nothing in here. There's nothing. You know, there's nothing really to like. And then when they said, well, we're still going to pay that dividend, you think, well, you're idiots. You know, there's just no reason to pay that dividend. I can't imagine there's any investor out there right now who thinks that. I mean, I did see that somebody on Twitter was excited that they were keeping the dividend, but I thought this is kind of like, you know, like vampires taking the last bit of blood out of the body, isn't it? Before you know, without giving it a chance to develop some more blood for you to take, and that's how I very much feel about Intel at the moment. Yeah, and dividend investors.
It's a pity Paul's not here, isn't it, to discuss this with, because I strongly suspect he thinks Intel shouldn't be paying a dividend either, but I think he and I and you, maybe on the other side, would disagree on exactly the point that they should have stopped paying this dividend. He thinks the point of companies like this is to return capital to shareholders, and I probably think they weren't really in a position to do that a lot longer ago than he does. But alas, Paul is not here. Never mind. On the last thought with Intel, they do have one advantage, though, going forward that I can see. They've managed to get their hands on an ASML gadget thing before Taiwan Semi has. And that, I think, they believe is going to give them an edge when it comes to manufacturing, because those ASML things are pretty fancy.
Yeah, I did see that. I saw the story last year that they'd paid to jump the queue on the high NA EUV machine, which is the latest machine. But as far as I'm aware, ASML aren't really ready to release it either. So Intel, and it's a good idea for companies in production to get the mittens on something that's still work in progress. Because if you ever look into how semiconductors are etched, basically you put a B in and it makes an F. It's as crazy as that. So you have to spend all of your time figuring out, because it's going through so many mirrors. You have to spend a lot of time figuring out, how many Bs you need to make the specific code that you need, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like a lot of trial and error involved in actually getting the patterns that you need. So I think this is a good move for them, but these things, as far as I'm aware from ASML, are not yielding anything yet. So this is nothing more than them getting their hands on something a little bit early. But I think it's not a bad sign. I just worry about the rest of the business.
They're signing up customers for their foundry. They've got AWS signed up as a customer. They've got Qualcomm signed up as a customer. That's encouraging stuff. They plan to catch Taiwan Semi by 2025. I give this a 10% chance that their plan is to just keep taking debt until 2025 to pay a dividend, and then hopefully try and pay all of that back down, and then keep paying a dividend that they really shouldn't be paying, because they still need to innovate and they still need to. That would feel to me a lot like not learning. I mean, if ever there was an example of not learning lessons, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we're seeing that, aren't we? We are seeing that, and I think that might be one of their issues. They finally get back on level footing and they start. I mean, what would be really ironic is if they started issuing shares. I mean, that would kill me inside. If they cut the dividend and start issuing shares, I think I'd laugh my bollocks off, to be honest. But
issuing shares in the 20s. Which is quite recently.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what other people's thoughts are. If you hold Intel, what are you thinking? Pop it in the comment section. What are we missing? Was it a shock to you when you saw this report? I mean, to me, I was genuinely shocked. I was just so glad I wasn't holding on to it.